Welcome to today's webinar, MLK Day of Service in the Time of COVID-19. It's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. Barbara Stewart was unanimously confirmed in February of 2018 to serve as CEO of AmeriCorps, the federal agency for national service and volunteering. AmeriCorps brings people together to tackle the country's most pressing challenges, engaging more than 270,000 members and volunteers in service across the country. Barbara is passionate about the agency's service mission and the ways it strengthens communities, develops individuals, and fosters civic engagement. With more than 25 years of experience in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors, Barbara is focused on modernizing the agency's business operations, building sustainability, and positioning AmeriCorps for future growth. Barbara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all of you, except for those who might be on the West Coast where it's still the morning. It's fun to see all of the names in the chat. I actually just saw the Greater Chicago Food Depository come up from my hometown of Chicago. So it's fun to see all of you logging in and joining us this afternoon. And I am very, very thrilled, as are all of my colleagues, that so many of you are interested in learning more about how you and your community can serve on Martin Luther King Jr. Day this year. So again, it's really exciting to have so many of you join us today. For those of you who aren't familiar with our agency, AmeriCorps is the federal agency for national service and volunteering. We bring people together to tackle the country's most pressing challenges, helping students stay on track to graduate, combating hunger and homelessness, responding to natural disasters, helping seniors live independently, supporting veterans and military families, and so much more. Each year, AmeriCorps engages 270,000 Americans of all ages and backgrounds in service through our AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Seniors programs. And we also lead the National Days of Service on September 11th and Martin Luther King Day, bringing people together to improve their communities. And MLK Day is what brings us together today. So again, thank you so much for joining us. During his lifetime, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. worked tirelessly to build a society that values the worth and dignity of every human being. He believed in challenging America to live up to the ideals enshrined in our Constitution of liberty and justice for all. He called on us to expand economic opportunity and build pathways for all people to achieve the American dream. He challenged individuals to take action. He believed every person possessed the power to lift himself or herself up, no matter what the circumstances. He recognized the power of service to strengthen communities and achieve common goals. Everybody can be great because everybody can serve, Dr. King said. He taught us that every individual has something to contribute. While we've made great progress, there's much work to do to realize Dr. King's dream. This work has become even more urgent in the wake of the pandemic. COVID-19 is more than a health crisis. It's dealt a blow to our economy, strained our education and social welfare systems, and revealed existing disparities in our society. Meeting today's social and economic challenges and addressing racial inequality requires action, and it requires all of us. MLK Day is a great opportunity for us to work together to tackle some of these tough challenges. In 1994, Congress passed the legislation designating the Martin Luther King holiday as a National Day of Volunteer Service, a day on, not a day off. This legislation recognized that the best way to honor Dr. King's legacy was through acts of service that bring Americans together to meet needs in their communities. For the past 26 years, our agency has had the honor and privilege of leading this National Day of Service. We've seen it grow from a handful of local events to projects taking place in all 50 states. We work with community and faith-based organizations, government agencies, national service programs, businesses, and schools to organize and support local projects. On MLK Day, Americans of all ages deliver meals, refurbish schools and community centers, collect food and clothing, and much more. Some organizations also use MLK Day to recruit and train volunteers to serve the community year-round, such as tutors or mentors for at-risk youth. This year, MLK Day will be different because of COVID-19. Organizations are developing projects to honor Dr. King while protecting the health and safety of volunteers. This year, there'll be more collection events to receive donations of warm clothing, food, and supplies. There'll be more meal delivery projects to provide food to homebound elderly. Some organizations are offering virtual events, like making cards to send to military service members or nursing homes. This is also an opportunity for virtual discussions on equity and justice. And there are many ways to serve without being part of an organized project. So whether you're shoveling the snow of an elderly neighbor's walk or bringing food to a local food bank, everyone can do something. It doesn't have to be an organized event. There's no shortage of work to be done or lack of ways to get involved. And I'm looking forward to hearing from our speakers who will share more today in our webinar on ideas of how MLK Day can be celebrated. I'll close with this. As Dr. King said, make a career of humanity and you will make a greater person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. Very inspiring words. Thank you for joining today, and thank you for your interest in making MLK Day powerful and impactful for your community. So now I'm going to turn it back to Rhonda Taylor. And again, thank you for having me join this afternoon. I'm excited to see what you all will create for MLK Day.
Rhonda, you may be on mute.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was having a little trouble getting my screen unmuted. I apologize. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. For those in live stream sphere, I think we may be having a couple of technical difficulties. We will post the link on our Facebook page as well. So watch for that immediately. And if you are missing anything, we will also have this recording available on our website, mlkday.gov, on Monday. But thank you all for joining. We look forward to the rest of this webinar. We're going to share some ideas and resources that are available to you to help you plan and implement the King Day of Service. This year, as Barbara and others have mentioned, we know things are going to look very differently, but in many ways, it's a more important King Day than we've had in many years because the needs in communities are so great. So with that, I want to turn it over to our first presenter, David Payne. Thanks.
Thank you, Rhonda, and thank you, Barbara. I want to just continue to acknowledge how much AmeriCorps and all the AmeriCorps organizations and alumni and members have meant to us as we've grown 9/11 into an extraordinary day of service like MLK Day. So thank you so much for your leadership in that regard. And, you know, looking at some of the chat, there's quite a lot of people on. I just recognize so many of you that participated also in the 9/11 Day of Service. So I did want to just quickly thank you so much for your participation on that important day. And Rhonda is exactly right in saying that, you know, these 2 days of service, particularly now in the pandemic, are more important than ever. And what was so remarkable for us was to see that an overall increase in how many people actually participated in the 9/11 Day of Service this year, despite COVID. So I think it just speaks to the potential opportunity here with MLK Day. So if Rhonda, you want to proceed with the slides, I can talk just a little bit about a few things that will be important under our program. So as you might have imagined, you know, like any day of service, we had to pivot predominantly to a virtual volunteer model for 2020. And that was a big change for us because we had traditionally organized, as many of you know, these large-scale volunteer service projects in which we were planned to pack meals for people in need in cities all around the country, and we were not able to do that safely with COVID. And so that required that we pivot to a different approach. And sometime around June, when we realized that was a fact of life, we started work to launch a brand new website at 911day.org that would focus entirely on ways in which people could get involved in service digitally. And I do want to say that we will be intending to include opportunities for people to support MLK Day on our website this year as well. So although it has 911day.org as its URL, certainly you can direct people to that if they're looking for some digital opportunities. We'll have more than 70 different links to nonprofit activities and different types of service projects that people may want to consider. You're certainly also very willing, can go ahead and pull a lot of those very same links and publish them on your own site. And what I wanted to sort of talk about more generally in this area, and you can move to the next slide, is the importance of making it easy for people to participate digitally. You know, one of the things that we learned both in this experience this year and in the research that we conducted afterwards was that, you know, so many people want to help, but, you know, there are different levels of engagement for people, you know, and not everybody is going to want to do intensive things right out of the gate. And so one of the things that we learned was how important it is to, if you're going to create virtual opportunities online, that you create very easy things that people can do initially so that you can give people opportunities to make a difference in simple ways. Of course, that could be donating, but it also can be learning about things and gaining information and access to gain better understanding about social equity and other things that may be particularly important now. In our particular case, we tried to focus in on issues that were of greatest importance to people in our community, and that's millions of individuals, based on research we conducted, and also activities that were very relevant to the current pandemic environment we're in. And so, of course, we touched on things like hunger relief, the ability to create opportunities to assist people who are food insecure, both in your local community and also through, you know, donations to food banks and others. But there's some very creative and new ways to support hunger relief that we tried to identify and post on our site. Mental health, as you know, is a major problem right now. It's a significant issue, and so we tried to provide simple ways in which people could either share their mental health story or access mental health resources in simple ways to assist them in dealing with some of the feelings that many people have as a result of COVID. And of course, because 9/11 is very first responder focused, we had activities like that. So we tried to create a lot of simple and easy things to do. And I would encourage you to go to our site and look at some of the ideas that we posted, and feel free to borrow them and use them on your own site, as well as add your own ideas and creative suggestions. You can go to the next slide. So what was really helpful for us was to partner with many, many nonprofit groups, some of which I know are participating on this call. So we really look to you to help curate some of the really interesting ideas that people could consider. And what we found was that there is just an unlimited number of really creative and interesting ways for people to get involved digitally. So I want you to think about that and see if you can, incorporate as many opportunities that are creative into your digital offering for MLK Day as you possibly can. If you are going to do some things in person, and I'm sure many of you are, we certainly had literally millions of people that did get out and volunteer in person, but they followed very careful safety protocol. We observed that, and I would just encourage all of you, I'm sure you're going to do this anyway, but to make sure that you're posting safety protocol, that you're providing people with the information they need. So if their intention is to assist in some in-person way, that they're following all the procedures and protocols that are going to be necessary to make that possible. But I would just want to encourage you to if you're going to do something digitally, start off by giving people simple and easy things to do first, and then find ways to sort of build their level of comfort and engagement over time. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. So what was amazing for us was to see that we actually had 2 million more people participate in the 9/11 Day of Service in 2020 than in 2019. And as you can see here, again, a lot of people did participate in person, yeah, despite the fact that there was a lot of advice to be careful about doing that. But in almost every case, all that we saw were people that were really being very careful about what they were doing. So we were really excited about the kind of support we got. And one of the things that was successful for us was leveraging a lot of prominent celebrities and local influencers and mayors and others to post and promote the idea of 9/11 as a day of service and to drive people to the 9/11 Day website. So I would encourage you, to reach out to your own influencers at whatever level they are. They could be community leaders or elected officials in your local communities, and invite them to do as much as they can to be your advocate and to spread the word on your behalf. Rhonda, you jump to the next slide. So with that, I'll turn it over to Beth. Again, thank you so much for participating in 9/11 Day, and we look forward to being part of the MLK Day observance this year.
David, thank you so much. And I was really excited to hear about your organization, and definitely interested in talking with you later about how One Warm Coat can be one of your nonprofit partners for that day as well.
Well, we would appreciate that, especially with this being the 20th anniversary of 9/11 coming up. So you're all welcome.
Fantastic. It looks like a wonderful organization. Mike, I'm ready for the next screen. So I'm Beth Amadeo. I'm president and CEO of national nonprofit One Warm Coat. Our mission is very simple. It's to provide free coats to people in need. And that's everyone from infants to senior citizens and everyone in between, including homeless people, families in need, and school children. So the way that we accomplish this is by working with volunteers across the country. Typically during this time of year, there are around 4,000 to 5,000 coat drives taking place across all 50 states. And those are organized by sometimes by volunteer groups, sometimes by schools, faith-based organizations, or individuals. We actually have a number of youth who organize coat drives every year as well. Last year, because of all of those wonderful volunteers across the country, we facilitated the collection and distribution of more than 500,000 coats. Mike, you can show the next screen. This is just a few basic facts about poverty in America. I know you guys are all really tuned into this, and also the cold weather effects on health. One of the things that is very concerning is that children and senior citizens and others at risk are particularly vulnerable to hypothermia. And it doesn't have to be below freezing for hypothermia to set in without protection from the cold. This year, we are finding that our partner agencies, we have close to 1,000 partner agencies across all 50 states, are reporting that the increase in demand for services this year is up by 30 to 50% from where they were last year. So those services don't just include giving out coats. Those services are everything from mental health services to providing food, to utility assistance, housing assistance, preschools for low-income families. And the fact that our agencies pretty much across the board are reporting this huge increase in demand is something that we want to address. And that's why we're really excited to have this opportunity to talk to so many wonderful volunteers across the country. Mike, I'm ready. Thank you. So total, we were founded almost 30 years ago. And total, since we were founded, we've provided coats to over 6.6 million people. Because we are an entirely virtual nonprofit, we do not have a headquarters or a physical facility. We like to say that we were working from home before working from home was cool. We are able to provide one person with a coat for every dollar donated. So we have a really huge impact. Obviously, coming into this fall, we knew that coat drives were not going to look the same. For one thing, many schools and businesses who have held coat drives for us in the past are not open right now. People are either learning or working virtually. So we, as David mentioned, we felt it was really important to have a virtual option for participation. When you register for a coat drive on our website, you are provided with a link to create a personal coat drive page. And so we found that this year, many people are doing virtual coat drives instead of physical coat drives. Although I will also add that we've seen a great deal of creativity in how people are conducting coat drives following social distancing and safety protocols. One example is a school last week that had parent volunteers with boxes waiting by the curb during morning carpool for 3 days in a row and asking families to bring coats to drop in those boxes as they drove past. Everyone wore masks. Everyone practiced all the good safety guidelines that we know are important, and they collected over 400 coats. So there are definitely ways to hold physical coat drives in a safe manner. We've seen a lot of drive-through types of coat drives. We've seen other things where people will simply set a collection bin somewhere for several hours and kind of, wave from a distance and thank people for participating. And then our advice has been, once the coats are collected, to set those aside for a minimum of 48 hours before you sort the coats and deliver those to a local agency. So we do have a map on our website that we share with everyone who registers for a coat drive that lists all of our nonprofit partners. And then the coats that are collected in your community are then taken to a local partner agency in your community and distributed directly to those people in need. So I often have questions like, what about, I live in Tampa, is a coat drive really a good idea here? We actually have coat drives in every region of the country, and because the coats that are given out in those areas are collected in those areas, they tend to be exactly what's needed. If you're living on the street, even in Florida, you need protection from the elements, in particular the rain. So when we're collecting coats in Florida, we tend to see a lot of lighter fleeces, rain jackets, as opposed to if we're collecting in Chicago, we're getting really heavy, thick thermal coats. Mike, I'm ready. Thank you. I mentioned that $1 donation warms one person. A virtual coat drive is really just a fundraising coat drive, but we do provide links so you can share on social media and get friends and neighbors involved. A lot of people have used the Nextdoor app to collect physical coats as well. And 97% of every dollar donated goes directly to our programs. Another fun thing I want to mention that adds a little bit of a personal touch to coat drives. A lot of volunteer groups have enjoyed doing this, especially groups that have youth or children in them, although actually a lot of adults like to do this too, is to create something we call pocket notes, just a little maybe happy drawing or an encouraging saying to put on a piece of paper and put in the pocket of every coat that is donated. That way, when the person who receives the coat puts the coat on for the first time, they may eventually slip their hand in the pocket and find that little bit of happiness in their pocket. And we really like to let our volunteers connect directly with the people that are receiving the coats in that small way. It adds a little personal touch to it. I also want to add that we've always really focused on asking donors to please clean the coats before donating them. Obviously, that's even more important this year. So if you do decide to do a coat drive, I encourage you to really put a spotlight on the fact that we would love for everyone who has been cleaning out their closets during this lockdown or quarantine time to wash them before they donate them. And also always to make sure that they are clean and wearable and not torn and don't have stains. You can register to hold a coat drive at our website. It's onewarmcoat.org. And as I mentioned before, when you do, you receive a link to create a personal coat drive page that you can use to promote a physical or virtual drive. We provide lots of free tools and resources, including, I'm sorry, I just saw a question that I really like, so I'll come back to that in a second. We can also provide like press releases, images for social media, and of course guidelines for keeping your coat drive safe if you do move forward with a physical coat drive. And I did see a question that just popped up about the pocket notes. Can volunteers just create pocket notes? Yes, you can. And then we can help pair those with coats that are being donated through a different program. So we welcome that. Again, that's something that is mainly geared towards children, but we've seen some companies who will put out all kinds of craft supplies and people really get into it. So we're excited to be part of Martin Luther King Day of Service this year. Even though it's somewhat late in the winter season, it's still the perfect time for a coat drive. A lot of people are cleaning out after the holidays, and there's unfortunately in a lot of the country, there's still a lot of cold still to come. In fact, the last couple of years, the coldest temperatures have happened later in February and in early March. So there's still time for us to get warm coats. And we also do welcome any other kind of outerwear, gloves, mittens, hats, scarves. And I saw somebody put socks in there as a question. We've had a lot of people who will do a joint drive, coats and socks. So I'm going to turn you over now to Amy Cohen, who is at GW University. And Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Beth. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
You sound fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. You were fabulous, Beth. Hi, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be here and to see so many old friends and new friends in the chat. It's wonderful to be here with you all. You can move directly to the next slide and even the one after that. I'm going to begin with a quick background on the George Washington University Honey W. Nashman Center, where I serve as the executive director. Actually, Truth in Advertising, I previously served with the AmeriCorps agency as the director of Learn and Serve America, which was a program that engaged college and K-12 students in service and in service learning through grants to schools and community organizations. And so it's always a pleasure to be with you all. The Nashman Center, where I've been for 10 years, is a university-wide office at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. And we engage students and faculty and sometimes staff in all forms of service in our local community and beyond. We do this in order to advance diversity and inclusion, promote lifelong engagement in our American democracy, and improve the way that we do research and teaching and learning at our university. And of course, we do this in close partnership with nonprofit partners and city residents in order to improve the quality of life in our communities, as well as working to address the systemic disparities in our economy, education, environment, and so on. If you would move on to the next slide. So we do our work in a wide variety of ways. This year, GW, which normally has 25,000 students, about 9,000 of whom live on campus, this year, for the fall semester, we only had 500 students living on campus. And next semester, we expect about 1,000, actually 1,600, excuse me, to be living on campus. And yet we've been working to reinvent our programs for the pandemic age. So most years we have about 500 students serving on a weekly basis through our programs, including a literacy and math tutoring program, the Old America Reads program. We have a very large group of part-time AmeriCorps members serving in Jumpstart. Even with COVID, we have been able to engage over 100 elementary school tutors and nearly 80 Jumpstart Corps members, all of whom are serving online. And in terms of our preschoolers, we're sending language and literacy kits to families or doing short presentations for children and families. We do social innovation where we provide funding and training to students. We support about 70 courses each year and a lot of faculty research in partnership with the neighborhood. And we have a number of VISTA members serving in public schools, supporting educational programs. And finally, what we're really here to talk about is we do immersion service and service events. What we think of as immersion service are days of service as well as our alternative breaks program. So our immersion events, we kick off the school year with a very large event that we do in partnership with 9/11 Day each year. And it's also a welcoming day of service for our students, where we have about 2,500 students who serve. And then our other big day of service is Martin Luther King Junior Day. And you can go to the next slide. King Day is a 25-year tradition at GW. I believe the university began supporting and observing the Day of Service at the time that the legislation was passed, or in the first possible year. It's part of 2 weeks of programming on the campus to support Dr. King. And so those 2 weeks of programming include workshops and lectures and seminars around the life and legacy of Dr. King. On our King Day of Service, we normally have about 1,000 students and community members who serve throughout the community. Many years we'll partner with Serve DC, which is our commission on national service, to co-sponsor a number of events. We work with, most years we work with about 20 organizations on King Day. But of course, we have to reinvent service during the pandemic. So we really, beginning in the summertime, sat back to think about this. And you can move to the next slide. As we began to think about it, we actually started out in this spring and summer partnering with our friends at 911day.org to hold some roundtable discussions with other higher ed institutions and other organizations to really think about making sure that service is significant and meaningful, and developing and organizing reflection. We talked about how we would target outreach as well. So we can move to the next slide. One of the ways that really helped us think about service in a new way was this idea of pathways of public service and civic engagement. This is a beautiful tool that was created by the Haas Center at Stanford University that we found very useful when we talk about service with constituents, to move beyond thoughts about direct service. So the pathways of public service include, as you can see, community engaged learning and research, policy and governance, community organizing and activism, philanthropy, and social entrepreneurship and corporate social responsibility. So to begin to think about service beyond the way we think about it on days of service has been very useful. For example, under community organizing, some of the mutual aid organizations that have been working in our neighborhoods we've been working with them to support their organizing that is also direct service. So we can move to the next slide. So as we've worked with our partners, we've come up with a number of activities for King Day this year. We have a capacity to serve with, I think about 700 of our students will be serving directly. So one of the things that we're doing is writing letters through Operation Gratitude. I think Barbara mentioned them at the opening. This is an opportunity to write letters to military families and military members and first responders. One of the things that's really cool is one of our long-term partners is an organization called Girls on the Run. And they wanted to collect the stories of what's happened to the girls who run and what is happening with their volunteers and how the experience has changed them. So our service participants are going to be calling already existing participants and volunteers to collect their stories. They've developed a protocol for that. For our Jumpstart preschool program, as we do every year, we'll be making materials for sending things home to families. And what we've done is send out supplies to some of our partners so that they're able to make materials to share with families. Things like puzzles and matching games and stuff like that. One of the things that's really new for us this year, we generally tend not to do drives that involve collecting items. We tend to push our students to use their skills and capacities, but we know that this is a different year. And we were inspired by One Warm Coat to really think about how we could collect and distribute essential clothing and supplies to students in our schools. So we have partnered with the DC Public Schools and with our VISTA program to collect a wide variety of products for students. So we're going to be doing, in DC, it is a little late to collect warm coats. We'll collect some of those, but we'll also be looking at things like soap and menstrual tampons and pads and socks and masks, hats and gloves, other kinds of hygiene products that families need. And so we're putting together a wish list on Amazon and on other large companies so that people can purchase new items and ship them directly to us. And we're expecting a good turnout for this and hope that that will work in a new and big way. It's really a big change for us. If you move to the next slide. Some other ideas that we've had and that we are using is to support social media to prompt art projects. Questions like, what brings you joy? What does Dr. King mean to you? You can send these prompts out to your partners and get back art projects that can be posted in a digital gallery. Another big project we've worked on is to support the Smithsonian Institution and the National Archives. Both of them have need for transcription, and you can do some incredibly cool things. Actually, last year for King Day, even before the pandemic, we had students transcribing documents from the Freedmen's Bureau. Right after the Civil War, the newly freed enslaved people were recorded, and there were documents, and our students were really recording those so that all people can use those. The National Archives can make you a citizen archivist, and you can transcribe documents. This is all available online. We also heard some great stories about creating signs to go outside long-term care facilities so that people to send cheery messages about feeling good or being well, and in this case, for Dr. King. We can move to the next slide. One of the things we want to think about is how we build community when we do this. And so we're trying to find new ways to build community, because one of the fun things about a day of service is we do it together. And when we can't be together, we need to find new ways to do that. So we're finding ways to connect students on social media, to post pictures of their projects, to talk to one another during their projects, and to share their learning. We also are sharing reflection questions online and focusing on helping people to feel better and be better in this difficult time. One more, oh, and of course, we can use King Day as an opportunity to launch a new year of service and to think about how we would work together for a week, a month, a semester, or a year. And then in our next, one more slide, you know, we have been doing King Year for 25 years, and in DC, it can be extremely cold on a mid-January day. And so for the last 5 to 10 years, we've been celebrating King Day as not only a day of service, but as a day of leadership and learning. And so this year, that it lends itself to that very well. We host a series of workshops to, as they say, sharpen the saw or enhance our toolkit. So we'll be hosting a workshop on direct service, on what opportunities exist, on how to engage in a sustained dialogue. We have an art therapy course on how to build the beloved community. And finally, one looking at policy advocacy as a pathway to change. We really want to make sure that we're learning and taking this opportunity to be together and to learn more. With that, I'm done. And I thank you for your attention. And I'd like to turn this over to David Parker, who's Vice President of Research and Development with Serve Minnesota and the Minnesota Reading and Math Corps.
Yes, thank you, Amy. And hello, everybody from Minnesota, where coats are essential. And I thought I would say that as a lighthearted, obligatory commentary on our famous winters, but also in full and complete sincerity related to some of the neat things that we're hearing about. I have a couple of young kids, and as I think a lot of parents know, equipping yourselves and your children isn't actually cheap. So the work that we're hearing about today is just so neat on that regard, and I'm happy to be a part of it and learn about it, and also learn from everything that the other folks are presenting. So Serve Minnesota, the AmeriCorps Commission here in Minnesota, has had a long-standing commitment to education in our portfolio, and that shows up in a big commitment to a few programs that offer high-quality tutoring traditionally to students in traditional school settings, of course. So that means that our work of these programs that's been disrupted in a pretty severe way, just like we've been hearing in the media and all over, that we know that schools themselves have been disrupted and families have been disrupted. So we're all in this together. And so like the families and the schools that really our service commitments kind of partner with to do what we do, we also have pivoted. And so what we wanted to talk through is just kind of what we're doing there and how we can take the spirit of the Martin Luther King Day of Service and make that an example of how we're getting service, particularly to families. So what we've done in partnership with our programs is do that pivot to bringing high quality tutoring right into folks' homes via the as we all know, distance learning approaches. Also some ways of allowing families to access the service-based tutoring directly, independent of schools. And our kind of main, with that being a big imprint and a big focus for us, what we want to do to honor the day and Dr. Martin Luther King himself is do what we can to get that to families, to put service in the spotlight and show how service is in fact helping kids, and then make that something that's accessible to families as we're already in their homes as part of our pivot. So we have programming again across the educational spectrum, but we are particularly interested in early educational outcomes in a few of our programs. So we have a pre-K program that has high quality, kind of engaging, fun, instructional learning opportunities that are a part of the traditional tutoring, but we're excited to just kind of wrap that up, put it in a demo kind of form, and put that on our website presence for folks to see. And we want to do the same thing in early literacy and early math, where again, our literacy or our tutoring programs would otherwise be doing this in the schools and are currently now doing this directly with families. We're excited at the chance of the MLK Day of Service to be yet another way where we can get this contribution of service and education out there, so that a family member that can find it can come and see and learn something about the importance of, we're deep into the education space, so the importance of sound awareness. You got to hear that there's 3 sounds in cat and before reading it, and that sounds simple, but it's critical. And it turns out that families can do that. And so we're excited to just share that insight into these critical learning milestones through our programs, through what we do through service, and then show families that it's something that they can do themselves. So that's what we're doing. We're looking forward to being a part of that, looking forward to getting that work out there, and we really appreciate being a part of this. And now I will turn this over to Karen Daniel and Mike Minks from Youth Service America. Thank you.
Before Mike and Karen start, this is Rhonda. I wanted to just say we will go over our time limit. And we will attempt to get all of your questions answered. So don't worry about that. And if you can hang with us, hang with us. If you can't, you can email me at mlkday@cns.gov. And the entire presentation will also be available to replay on Monday at our website, mlkday@cns.gov. And so Karen and Mike, take it away.
Thanks, Rhonda. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Great. So thank you to Barbara and Rhonda and AmeriCorps for hosting us today, for organizing this call. It's great to be with all of you. At Youth Service America, we engage young people ages 5 to 25 in improving communities through service projects. And so we had to pivot quickly back in March and April, because our signature day of service that we promote is Global Youth Service Day, an annual event in April. So given the timing of closures, we had to really think fast about how to help people serve in other ways. We also did a lot for the 9/11 Day of Service. So Martin Luther King Day represents our 3rd big day of service that we are promoting. And so Mike and I are eager to tell you a little bit of what we've learned along the way. If you go to the next slide, you'll see our page that we've put together specifically around resources for serving during the time of COVID. We started thinking about this last March with kind of the biggest issue areas that were prominent and getting worse during the time of COVID, and how young people could focus on these issues. We started with 10 issues. We're now up to 20 and growing. And this page contains a whole lot of links to both our resources and partner resources to help people think about serving around these areas. On the next slide, you'll see the page of our website that is dedicated specifically to resources around serving for King Day. You'll find resources here. You'll also find project ideas, both in the form of specific service projects, as well as bigger issues around recruiting, training, and capacity building on the day. We also encourage particularly school-based programs to think about a semester of service, which launches on Martin Luther King Day and continues throughout the spring, culminating with Global Youth Service Day. And we find that a lot of young people and their adult allies use this as a time to really dig deep into learning about an issue, investigating the root causes, and serving over a substantive time period to make a real difference around an issue. On the next slide, you'll see our ideas database. On this page, users can search for project ideas based around things that they love to do. We call that their spark, things that bring them joy. They can also search by an issue area that they are particularly passionate about. And we've also added a do at home filter so that people can search for projects that are particularly easy to do virtually or from home. Now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Mike, to continue with the slides.
Great. Thanks, Karen. The next few slides that we have to share are some tips from one group of our partners that we work with around Days of Service, our lead agency grantees, which this year there are about 35 of them that are citywide or statewide organizations that we work with for all 3 days of service, 9/11 Day, MLK Day, and Global Youth Service Day. And we've compiled this set of tips from them and their experience doing these activities in their communities. And these are all on a resource page on our website that I'll share with you in the chat. I'll run pretty quickly through all of these tips and probably not cover every single one because you can go and look at them all on your own. The first category that we really looked at is around individual or small group family activities that folks could do at home. And we've had lots of partners work on kind of creating project kits that can be sent home, especially if students are picking up homework packets and that kind of thing at schools, those project kits can be distributed. Looking at where multiple families can take on projects in their own neighborhoods. For example, for 9/11 Day, we worked with an organization called Move for Hunger that has a resource around doing front porch food drives. So that you can do that in a safe way in your local neighborhood and then drop it off. And then similarly, we always love a good competition, and that can be a way to incentivize participation is organizing friendly competitions between neighborhoods or groups of families or, your pods, that kind of thing. On the next slide, we really look at where we can do continuing with virtual activities, but doing as a full group, not just limited to an individual or a family. And so looking at, we always recommend that there's a larger activity planning committee so that you as a single staff person or organizer doesn't have to take on everything yourself. And really letting them take the lead with how to make things virtual. Since I think we all have lots of different types of experiences in how to do things virtually over the last 8 or 9 months that you can put that to use with multiple volunteers helping you plan and lead projects. Obviously thinking about access to technology, if folks don't have that, and how you can work with local resources, your school system and libraries and community centers and that kind of thing that can help folks access technology to do things virtually. And that similar to some of the different types of activities that Amy talked about at GW, really looking at where you can do awareness building activities, advocacy activities, philanthropy activities, in addition to the direct service projects. And in a lot of cases, those are a little bit easier to make virtual than a direct hands-on service activity. On the next slide, we certainly did have a number of groups still plan in-person activities and do so safely. Obviously a focus on outdoor projects, which is obviously weather dependent, so maybe a little bit tougher in some places for MLK Day. But that if you are indoors, making sure it's large spaces that are well ventilated and people are spread out, looking at multiple shifts and having sequential tasks done by different groups, so that if you can break apart what typically might be 3 or 4 different steps in a project, that you can break that apart. And continuing on the next slide, these tips continue. Obviously thinking about, as part of your planning checklist, making sure that you're purchasing PPE and cleaning supplies and all of that good stuff. And that's part of that. Making sure that you're having folks sign in and collecting contact information so that if contact tracing does become necessary, you have that information. We had a couple of groups build a kind of a safety pledge into the orientation when they started their project, so that it was a kind of a way to remind folks of the safe behaviors that are expected. So lots of different tips that can be put into place. On the next slide, we have collected all of those tips, some of our own resources, lots of partner resources onto a kind of virtual service resource collection. And on one of these tabs, you'll see all of the tips that we just went through spelled out that you can reference. The other thing that I'll point out on this page is under the Get project ideas, there are 7 or 8 different links to collections that our partners have done, all with different ideas. So there are definitely no shortage of kind of virtual or individual or kind of small group safe activities that folks have come up with over the last 8 or 9 months. So you know, don't feel the need to recreate from scratch. You can go and find lots of ideas there. Another resource that we wanted to share on the next slide is an opportunity to create your own training, really looking at MLK Day as a time to kind of build capacity for future service, as several of you have mentioned, beginning of of a year of service, and you know, if it's too difficult to kind of pull together a service activity, looking at providing a training for volunteers and project leaders and members to prepare them for to lead service activities in the future. And we've pulled together all of our video content from the last several years, about 70 different videos in different topic areas that where you can really create your own training by going to this website. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Karen for our last resource and a couple of grant opportunities that we have.
Thanks, Mike. So we just wanted to let you know about 3 opportunities. The first is a tip sheet that we've put together on how to plan and implement an anti-racist service project. Over the summer, we started thinking about how we could contribute to this conversation, and we thought about service projects as really being types of social intervention. So we put together some resources for how to think about these issues throughout the process of planning a service project. So that's here. On the next slide, we know that everyone likes to hear about grant opportunities, and we have 2 available right now that we wanted to tell you about. First of all, through the Sodexo Stop Hunger Foundation, we have grants for youth of $500 who are planning service projects around the issue of childhood hunger. That deadline is January 22nd, so we would love you to apply and share with people you know who would be interested. And finally, on the last slide, you'll see another grant opportunity for after-school programs that is sponsored by the Mott Foundation. These are $500 grants for integrating service and service learning activities into after-school programs. That deadline is tomorrow. We'll keep that application open over the weekend so that you have a little bit of extra time. But again, we know people like to hear about grant opportunities, so we couldn't pass up the opportunity to tell you about these. So with that, I will close and turn things back to Rhonda.
Thanks, everyone. First, I wanted to start with, next slide, please, Mike. Thanks. I wanted to show you our Day of Service logo, and we hope that you will brand with us to the extent that you are pushing out products or information about the King Day of Service. We hope that you will use our logo and attach it to your projects to the National King Day of Service. It's important that others understand that this is a day of service and they get out and do their part to help meet a need in their community. And as we've heard on this webinar, needs may be of a social, emotional kind, or they can also be, you know, housing and hunger and keeping warm throughout the winter, having appropriate clothing. So the needs are big, and we want everyone to use this Day of Service as a way to meet an important need in their community and with their neighbors. Next slide, please. our website is mlkday.gov. You will find lots of tools and resources on that page, a list of our King Day grantees. We do give out grants annually, and there is a list of grantees in case there's one in your neighborhood or your area that you would like to connect with. You can register your service projects. It's really important. We think that you do this, whether you're looking for more volunteers or not. People come there looking for projects. And when they come, they may see yours and be inspired by what you're doing and plan themselves to do the same thing or something similar, either in a self-directed way or with family and neighbors. And last on that page, you will also see at the bottom, stay connected. Most of you on this call are absolutely connected to us, but you may want to connect with another part of our work, with AmeriCorps or AmeriCorps seniors, or to learn about grant opportunities when they're available, and you can sign up to do that there. Next slide. We have lots of project resources on those pages, from guides to a successful project, links to the King Center and the King Philosophy, and we have links to some of our partners' materials that you have already seen. Later this week, we will also have some information up about how you can use Nextdoor in your community to mobilize around the King Day of Service and beyond. You know, they have a place where neighbors can post that they need help with things like that. And with help that neighbors can provide. So it can be a very important resource for a day of service or throughout the year, and we encourage you to check it out. We'll also have some other resources. There's a group called Stop the Blood that is part of a government project to encourage people to be able to be their own first responders when in times of an accident that involves hemorrhaging. Many lives can actually be saved if you know what to do when there's an injury before help arrives. And finally, I also wanted to tell you that if you're from Michigan, the Michigan Community Service Commission is offering grants for the King Day of Service. After this webinar, we'll PDF the webinar and send it to everyone who signed up, and we'll list some of these opportunities that we've mentioned. Next slide, please. You'll also find a full array of communications resources, from a sample proclamation that'll be online next week, our complete communications toolkit in mid-December, but there are already radio and TV PSAs and videos and graphics and other promotional materials that you can use, including photo gallery, B-roll, and some volunteering data if you want to talk about volunteering in your community. Next slide. In January, you'll see us do a countdown to King Day. I encourage you all to do the same thing on your social media channels, and continue to post ideas that your folks in your network might utilize to plan their own projects or to join you. Again, register your projects and stay in touch with us. You can reach several of us at the corporate AmeriCorps through mlkday@cns.gov, or me directly at rtaylor@cns.gov, although I'm also on the MLK Day one. And we'll try to get you what you need or answer your questions as soon as we possibly can. Next slide. So it's time for Q&A, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike. We'll do our best to answer all of your questions. And as I said, we will PDF the webinar and send it out to everyone who signed up, along with some links to resources and how to reach some of the folks that you heard from today.
Thanks, Rhonda. All right, everyone. So if you'd like to ask a question using the audio, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute your line. Otherwise, you can type your question into the Q&A panel and Rhonda will select from those. And if we've reached capacity, I believe we have, and you're viewing through Facebook, you can email mlkday@cns.gov and we'll respond to you after the webinar concludes. So Rhonda, I see the Q&A box is pretty full.
Yep,
If you want to
I'm going
pick
to
from
start
those.
there. I think there were a couple of questions, David Payne, that were toward you. What is the link for the 70 virtual opportunities? And can we post opportunities for other vistas on this digital volunteer opportunity portal? How do we do that?
I'll go ahead and post in the chat just the website for 9/11 Day, where you can find all those opportunities and the links where you can just extrapolate them if you want, just extract them if you want.
And will it also, can people add opportunities to the portal?
They can send me an email with suggestions, because absolutely we would be delighted to be able to list other opportunities for MLK Day. So that doesn't mean that we can curate, say, your volunteer projects, where if you want people to sign up, you'll have to do that through All for Good or, you know, Volunteer Match or some of those other applications. But if you want to send us ideas for things people could do digitally, as you know, we have a list of lots of those kinds of opportunities. So we just need a really short, maybe one sentence description of what the sort of opportunity is. If you're sort of looking for ideas on what the format of that description, just go to our website and then click other opportunities down below, and you'll see sort of essentially how we present each one of those opportunities, and then how we add a link to it. So we're more than happy to try to customize that list of 50 or 60 additional opportunities to focus more on things that might be particularly relevant for MLK Day.
Great. And Deidre, you were the one who asked this question. David's right. You can create an opportunity on All for Good, which is the register a project link at mlkday.gov, and then you can send that link out broadly to other vistas if you want to. Deborah asked, I'd be interested in knowing how you set up an Amazon wish list so that purchases can be sent to us. Does anyone on the call know that? I've not used it before. Does anyone else on the call know that? Beth, Amy?
We can get you the answer. We're struggling a little bit because we have a corporate account which can't share out to everyone, but we will make it work.
Okay.
We can get back to you.
All right, so Deborah, someone will get back to you. If you email me at mlkday@cns.gov, I'll make sure we get you an answer. And Amy, Deborah also wants to know about who to contact regarding transcription opportunities.
I can put this, I'll type the answer in as well.
Okay.
For Smithsonian, you go to transcription.si.edu, and at the National Archives, it's archives.gov/citizen-archivist. And again, I'll type this into the Q&A.
Okay, thank you. Doug asked, what are the risks, legal, ethical, associated with in-person volunteering, maybe considerations other than risk? I think, first of all, we'd say absolutely you should check to see what the guidelines are for gatherings in your community. I do know that some of our grantees who had 9/11 projects, you know, they couldn't sign up more than 30 people, and they all had to wear a mask when they came, and they, even outside, they made them wear masks, and they set up stations that were far enough apart that people were maintaining at least 6 feet distance. So what I would say to you is you have to check with your local guidelines to make sure that you're not exceeding the number of people. And frankly, what I think you have to weigh the considerations of what an event could, of what an in-person event might do in your community to the healthcare workers. I mean, we are, it seems, according to all the maps across this country, in pretty dire straits around the stresses that we are placing on the healthcare workers in our community. So I think that is a big consideration for in-person volunteering in January. And I would encourage everyone to think about, are there things that we can all do to make sure that healthcare workers know that we care about them and we want to help take care of them too. It's an important time, important in this environment.
And Rhonda, can I also jump in?
Yes, please.
Yes. Yeah, so, since this topic came up quite a bit with 9/11 Day, one of the things we did was to encourage people to do in-person projects if they were essential services that had to be met to meet the needs of people who were particularly suffering from the pandemic. So you have to really have a high bar. And then we found that many local food banks, which are doing this every single day and need to do it, have become a terrific resource in terms of protocol and procedure. So if you haven't previously, engaged in an in-person project in this pandemic, you might want to reach out directly to them and see what they're doing, because they obviously are very careful about it. And it's not just the protocol, it's also the way in which they're very careful in registering everybody. They're setting up the potential for contact tracing. There's obviously releases and other things that have to be signed. So there are a ton of things that need to take place in order for you to put a project on in person safely, because ultimately you don't want to be in a situation where you're trying to do a good thing, but in the ultimate outcome is you create a spreader event, particularly at this time, as Rhonda points out, when in many communities the healthcare infrastructure is completely overwhelmed. So really think long and hard about if there are other alternatives, if you can.
Thanks, David. Virtual volunteering, and my last question is in regards to a system that can be used to do virtual volunteering like tutoring and coaching. Is there a safe system to use to connect volunteers to people in need that is secure and, of course, safe? David Parker and or Amy, I know both of you are engaged in this. Would you like to answer?
What we have done is to use the platform that our children are using. So in many cases, it's Microsoft Teams, and that's what we've been told to do. In other cases, it is Zoom. But we use very specific protocols about how to make that safe and secure, including sharing the link on a daily basis rather than sending the link out over a long period of time. We require all of our tutors to be in multiples. No one is ever allowed to be in a chat room or in a room with a minor alone. Using many of the same protocols that we use for child protection in other AmeriCorps or tutoring programs.
And David Parker, do you have anything to add to that?
No, we're doing very similar things. It's been great to hear that we're kind of all mobilizing around this. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Volunteer ideas for seniors in service, RSVP, are volunteer basis in the high-risk category for COVID, and many aren't comfortable or willing to serve virtually. A huge impact on our outcomes. So, Anne, I once ran, and someone, I think David mentioned this on, or YSA mentioned it. I once ran a food drive in my neighborhood, and I printed out sheets and I stuck them in, although I know you're probably not supposed to do this, everyone's mailbox in my community. And they dropped off food on my doorstep on a given day, and then I took it to the food bank. I first checked to see what the needs were at the food bank, what kind of items they needed, whether it was food or hygiene. And I put that on a list and gave folks a day to drop it off, and I got a good return on that. That could be something that your seniors could do. Also, we've mentioned social isolation. You probably have a good list of folks that could just use a phone call, and your RSVP volunteers have had background clearances, and probably all of them have had background clearances. So I would suggest that there may be a group of people in your community that could just use a phone call, or it may be that your RSVP volunteers could, do socially distanced, contact-free delivery of food to folks in need, or that sort of thing. And I love, love, love the personal notes. If they're not comfortable making phone calls, they could write a note and send to a neighbor or a friend that they know may be isolated in this time. And so I think those are all some ideas. Passing out or organizing neighbors to do their own energy assessments could be a good idea. Encouraging them, if they can, to donate to smoke alarms or things like that are in huge need this time of year. So many fires happen in the winter months when people are just trying to figure out a way to keep warm. And so things like that can be really, really important. Yes.
This is Mike.
Go ahead.
It looks like we have one person who'd like to ask a question over audio. I'm going to go ahead and unmute.
Okay.
Leanne, you should get a prompt, and now you can speak.
Okay, thank you. I guess the brave person. So all of our programs, all of our members are involved in homeless and veterans outreach, so they're all on the front lines. Following all the health protocols, we're largely doing the same kind of service that they are doing, the same kind of service that they were in previous years. So the challenge is on Martin Luther King Day to recruit volunteers, and of course we can have waivers and that, but one of the ideas that you said was to do a lot of small projects instead of one big project. So I was wondering, maybe on some ideas with all of our partner agencies, having perhaps one, recruiting one volunteer at each of the agencies or two volunteers in that way to, minimize the risk for our members.
Absolutely. But really, I think the challenge for you and for all of us is to find the right way this King Day to make a difference in our communities. And it may not be recruiting volunteers at all. It may be that you have a virtual session for volunteers and train them how to support the work going on forward. Would your veterans even, if you recruit volunteers, would your veterans, are there things that volunteers could bring that your veterans and homeless folks need? Is it a collection time? Is it a time to write notes or have a virtual meetup and help someone do a resume or prepare for an interview, those sorts of things? I think I would encourage you to figure out if recruiting one volunteer is the right thing for in-person, or if it's a better use to figure out something else in this time. We want to keep everyone as safe as possible while really meeting the needs that you see in your community. I hope that helps. Anyone else? We have another question that says, can we create our own MLK Day project, or do we need to be part of an organization? Absolutely, please do. We encourage self-directed and create your own projects. And as I said, even register those on our website, because it's really important for people to be inspired by the things that you are doing and the things you've thought of. Is it anticipated for MLK Day that visitors have off from their work or do service? I think it totally depends on your project sponsor. A lot of visitors participate in the MLK Day of Service, but I think it totally is up to your project sponsor. So I would leave that up to your project sponsor. The new logos are at MLKday.gov, and there's either a link for promotional materials or logos if you scroll down the page. How many days in advance do you recommend doing a social media countdown to King Day? We usually try to do it about 10 days out. So I would say 5 or 10 days out, at least 5, and we usually do 10. How can I find out about AmeriCorps programs operating in my state or county? If you go to our website, AmeriCorps.gov, there will be, if you scroll down, there are some links to find the projects in your state. But if Clifford, if you send me an email, I'll send you the link because we're in the process of redoing our website and some of those things are kind of hard to find. So rtaylor@cns.gov and I'll send you a link.
Rhonda, it looks like we have 2 more callers in the queue.
Okay.
Joe, I'm gonna unmute you right now. Hey, Joe, are you there? Joe, we can't hear you.
Oh, shit.
All right, Joe, if you'd like to try again, just raise your hand back up. I'm going to unmute you now, Lois. All right, you should get a prompt and then you can speak.
Okay. Good afternoon. I just wanted to know if I heard correctly that this presentation would be shown again.
Yes, ma'am. We will have a link. We're going to do our best to get it up by Monday, December 7th at mlkday.gov, and we'll have a link so that you can watch it again.
All right. Thank you so much.
Or listen to it again.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody
Rhonda?
else, Mike?
Yep, we have 2 more.
Okay.
Brenda, I'm going to unmute you, and then Joe, we'll get to you.
Hi, this is Brenda. It was an awesome presentation. Thanks for all the resources. I just wanted to know about the resource for the AmeriCorps. I'm in Georgia, so if I could get the link, please.
Okay. Will you email me at rtaylor@cns.gov and I'll send it to you.
R. Taylor?
Yes, ma'am. At cns.gov.
cns.gov. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Bye-bye.
Anybody else, Mike?
Yep. Joe, I'm going to unmute you again. Let's hope it works this time. Okay, you should get a prompt and then you can speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
Awesome. All right. Sorry, I think I was having an issue with my headphones. I posted something in the Q&A, but wasn't sure if it got seen. So with my organization, I'm part of the ICC of Minnesota, the Intercorps Council of Minnesota. And there's been some expressed interest for our MLK Day of Service to engaging with and working with Black, Indigenous, people of color communities in the spirit of MLK Day. And I want to know if anybody had some great resources or events that they know that were going on geared towards these kind of topics.
Can I answer that just from the Minnesota to Minnesota connection?
Absolutely. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I don't have a ready answer for you, but I have, I think, a good answer to work with you to get with some of the folks that are a part of our organization. My email is david@serveminnesota.org. Serve Minnesota is all one word, one lowercase. I would be more than happy to hear a question from you via email, and then just get some folks aligned that could share resources and co-plan. I appreciate that question.
Yeah, thank you, David. That sounds fantastic. I have a few. We have a few ideas already within the executive committee or executive board, but always looking for new ideas and opportunities.
Yeah, and I don't want to prevent other states and other folks from other states from answering, but I just want to make sure we connected. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
Okay. I was trying to figure out where I am in the. Any other questions, Mike?
Yep, we have one more caller. Actually, two more now. Everyone's joining in.
Okay.
All right. Danita, you're going to receive a prompt, and then you can unmute.
Hello, and again, I just echo the fact that this is a great presentation, and I appreciate the fact that you guys put this all together. My question, strange though it may be, you guys have a video that is on your site in reference to Martin Luther King Day, and it starts out with him speaking in reference to a speech that he gave, and it was actually a sermon, and you edited out certain portions of it. And it's talking about service and talking about the importance of it. And it has his daughter on there, Bernice. And we'd love to be able to utilize portions of that, because it speaks so well to service and to the day of service and all like that. How do we go about in obtaining just the clips? Because it's too long for us to post the way that it is, but I'm just saying, is there a marketing department? Is there?
If you send your request to me, rtaylor@cns.gov, or use MLKday@cns.gov, I'll do my best. We just lost our videographer, but I'll do my best to get you the raw pieces.
Thank you so much, but and I understand how that is, you know, with losing individuals. So I am just appreciative of the fact that you would even consider it. So thank you so much, and we'll do our best on this side. We're in Florida, so we'd like to spread the word down here as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Rhonda, it looks like we have two more now. I don't know how we're doing on time, if we need to start wrapping up.
I can answer as long as you know, I'm happy to keep answering. And I've got several questions in the chat, which I will try to keep getting to.
Okay, then I will go ahead and let Priscilla speak. Priscilla, you should receive a prompt, then you can unmute.
Yes, I'm Priscilla Sanchez. I'm the volunteer coordinator for the city of Mansfield in Texas. And one thing I want to put in there to utilize is the Red Cross. If you want to stay social distance, and we've been doing this for a while now, is to pair up with Red Cross and get their smoke detectors. Their new smoke detectors are actually, they're lithium batteries, and they last for 10 years. And what we do is have the families contact us, and if they're interested, then we can have them donated to them, and they can install their own smoke detectors. And that's what we plan to do for the MLK for social distance.
That's a wonderful service, and thank you for pointing out. Can you, is there a link at the Red Cross for connecting with that program? Do you know?
Well, what we do is we just pair up whoever the lead is in your city or county, and just contact them in general, and then they will pair you up with one of the leads to be able to connect with them. Because each one of them has like a district, and if you contact them, they'll connect you with the district person there for you to be able to do that. And we've installed last year, before all the pandemic came out, we actually did, I believe, 192 smoke detectors that we were able to assist the families with our volunteers. We have a big volunteer program here. This year it's been rather slow, but we normally have over 10,000 volunteers throughout the year.
Congratulations, that's wonderful. And that smoke detector program is really, smoke alarm program is really important. So
Yes, it is.
thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
And there was one more, did you say, Mike?
Yep. Jacinta, you should be able to unmute now.
Hello, thank you all for your time today for this wonderful and informative presentation. I just wanted to give you some backup. The lady from Florida who mentioned about your video, I'm not aware of the video she's talking about, but I do actually happen to have a CD. I was the secretary for our local NAACP for 4 years, and it was this video company that wanted to come and speak in regards to Martin Luther King. And so I happen to have a DVD with all of his speeches and all of any public appearances that he made. So if you all can't, since you lost your videographer, if you can't find anything, please feel free to have her email me, and she and I can connect, and you all might want to take a peek at it too. But I will definitely be willing to share, share the wealth. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay. And can you email me your contact information?
Okay. Can I have your email? I have David's, but he may not need it.
MLK, just use mlkday@cns.gov. That's easy.
And MLK Day at CNS. Now, you won't know what it is, but you just want me to put a little blurb about what it's referenced to? Okay, well, certainly. I certainly will.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, and God bless you all.
Thank you. You too. Anyone else?
That's it. Yep.
There are a few more questions if people, I will, you don't have to stay on if you didn't ask a question, but I'll try to answer them. Do you know of any book drives that collect children's books about anti-racism, looking for a national program? Mike and Karen, might you know? Mike or Karen, they may be off by now.
This is David Parker. I'll hop in. I just happen to still be listening. You may be aware of this resource already, but the University of Wisconsin-Madison has a children's collaborative book center, I believe. I might be getting their words wrong, but if you kind of Google all of that together, you should get to a great resource on a kind of a clearinghouse of books, diverse books for children. And I would suspect you could follow your nose to some options. So I just thought I would resource available.
Okay. And I'll also, I don't know if our friends at First Book have any curated lists or not. My organization is interested in engaging with BIPOC communities in the spirit of MLK Day. Does anyone have any great resources geared to engaging that community, with that community? Amy, are you all online still? I think we may have lost most of our presenters. It's kind of been a long time. I'll try to answer the rest of these questions after we hang up. I'll get a list and I'll do my best to get the rest of you answers. Thank you all. You've hung with us and we really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you for organizing.
Well, we really do appreciate you all and the great resources you offer to share. David Parker, are you still on? David Parker, are you still on?
David just messaged me that he had to leave.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll connect with him later. All right. Well, thank you all. I guess that's it.